I come from a generation of the 1960s in the United States, and my first experience of struggle was to be found in the civil rights movement of the early 60s. I think it would be important for us to say that the 60s movement experienced a revolution, actually, within the United States. It's an unfinished revolution because the demands that were put forward have legally been approved, but in actual fact, there's still a substantial struggle to be made. And for me, it was the beginning where I got arrested a number of times around demonstration issues, and I was able to study the first experiences of organization, both in New York City, where I was born and brought up, and in Ohio, and in fact in southern Ohio, which was more or less a segregated place. And from that beginning, I immediately went into the anti-war, Vietnamese War story. And it was there that I began to look for some theoretical basis for my activism. And it was time in the mid-60s when there was a revival of Marxism. And here is something I'd like to say something about, because there's a certain kind of determinism about past experiences that is not accurate. Because in the 1950s, preceding the revolutionary upsurge in the United States, it was one of the most reactionary times in American history. And everybody predicted that the students who were going through high school and college at that time would come out to be robots, right-wing robots, speaking the reactionary lines. But in fact, it turned to be the exact opposite. These young people who came out of the colleges and universities at that time did not end up becoming these little right-wing robots. On the contrary, we joined the revolutionary movement in the southern part of the United States, and not only the southern part, but actually throughout the country, to demand that there be fundamental change. Because what happened was that the kind of theory that I began to develop with others in the late 60s, early 70s, was a very orthodox, if you want to call it that, Marxism of the time. And I began to, in the early 70s, I began to question some of the principal ideas that were coming out of the communist movements and the socialist movements of the time. And I began to look for other sources of theoretical depth. And to do that, I came upon the work of Sylvia and a number of other comrades from Italy that had found their way to New York City and who were part of the radical scene of the 1970s. And in the process, in studying this non-dependent and autonomous conception of the working class, we began to also enter into the development of some important ideas in the Wages for Housework campaign. So, if you want to put it this way, if we're going to kind of shake things out, the political thinking that affected me at this time was a combination of the workerist interpretation of Marx in the 1960s that came from Italy, and the work of Sylvia and others around the Wages for Housework campaign that brought together to the first theoretical break of that time for me, which was the development of the ideas around zero work, which attempted to bring Wages for Housework and the workerist streams that were developing at this time. And so this leads to my the point of my own development.
And also cognitive work, for example, the work of cognition, which has usually traditionally been more recognized.
Yeah,
but it has,
work,
student work, exactly. In fact, George was very involved in the whole struggle about wages for students.
Yes.
And in Italy too, there was a whole movement, pre-salario, like saying studying is work. Because we don't study because we like it, but you're forcing us to take a degree in order to become more productive workers. So we are working already in preparing ourselves for future work. So we should be entitled to remuneration and to be supported economically. And it's been a big defeat in the United States when in fact they have forced students to pay. It's like paying, to prepare yourself to be exploited or to prepare yourself to be more productive. So yeah, the work has many, but I think it's important this concept that the manifold refers to forms of work that were never recognized as work. Sex work, emotional work, raising of children, all of that. It's a vast area of work. I think that the women's movement has really contributed immensely to showing the manifold of work.
There are laws that tell us what is legally considered work or not. Whereas in fact there's a tremendous amount of work that is not understood as work, but in fact is essential for the creation of surplus value.